A stone tool carved granite with impossible precision long before metal existed. This video reveals the lost engineering secrets that let ancient artisans shape materials harder than their own tools using only sand, water, and brilliant physics. By the end, you will understand exactly how they achieved flawless finishes that still baffle modern experts, permanently changing how you see human innovation. How did they drill perfect holes through solid rock without modern drills? And why does a simple reed hold the key to a technological mystery? What does true patience look like to you when you consider the scope of human history? The paradox is both obvious and profound. How can a stone, even a hard one, carve into granite which is often even harder? It seems like trying to scratch a diamond with another diamond. The answer does not lie in the stone alone, but in the invisible physics applied through it. Ancient artisans were not just hitting rock with rock, they were conducting a precise symphony of force and fracture. The key principle is called conchoidal fracturing. When a precise, concentrated blow is delivered to a brittle material like flint or obsidian, it does not just shatter randomly. Instead, it breaks in a predictable, shell-like pattern, peeling off a sharp, flat flake. This is how a relatively soft stone like antler or sandstone could be used to strike a harder core, directing energy to snap off a razor-edged flake that was far sharper than any metal tool we could make today. But that only explains shaping the tool itself. To carve granite, they needed a different kind of magic, one found in the most common substance on Earth. Sand. By using a simple stone tool to rub wet sand against a granite surface, they were no longer pitting stone against stone. They were employing millions of microscopic, harder minerals like quartz in the sand as countless tiny cutting teeth. The tool became merely a handle, a way to apply sustained, gentle pressure, while the abrasive particles did the actual carving. This is the brilliant resolution to the paradox. The stone tool was not the cutter, it was the conductor, guiding a relentless, microscopic abrasion that could slowly, patiently, and with incredible precision hollow out solid rock. This patient, percussive rhythm is the sound of one of humanity's first engineering solutions. For shaping the hardest stones like granite and basalt, artisans employed a method known as pecking and grinding. It was a process built not on speed but on an almost unimaginable persistence. A craftsperson would take a hammerstone, a rock even harder than their target, and begin a slow, deliberate dance of impact. Over and over, the hammerstone would strike the surface, each blow creating a tiny indentation, a small peck mark that fractured the stone's crystalline structure. This was not about brute force, but about controlled, incremental destruction. Picture the surface of a granite block slowly transforming from smooth to a textured landscape of countless small craters. Once the general shape was pecked out, the next phase began: grinding. They would use a simpler stone tool or even a piece of wood, rubbing it back and forth across the roughened surface with a slurry of wet sand and water. This abrasive paste, loaded with quartz particles, acted like a relentless sheet of microscopic sandpaper, gradually wearing down the peaks between the peck marks into a surprisingly smooth, even polished finish. This is how the colossal Egyptian obelisks were shaped, their immense forms emerging from solid bedrock through millions of deliberate actions. It is also how intricate jade carvings in ancient China achieved their flawless, glass-like surfaces, a testament to a different kind of strength. The true power here was not in a single strike, but in the collective will of a community, a dedication to a project that could span generations. The logic is both simple and profound. breaking down an impossible task into a near-infinite series of possible ones. How does a civilization move a mountain, one tiny, patient chip at a time? Yet, for all its effectiveness, this method had its limits, especially when the task required more than a surface finish, when the goal was to cut deep into the heart of the stone itself. But how do you make a perfectly straight, deep cut through a block of granite weighing many tons? The pecking method creates a shaped surface, but for a clean separation, ancient engineers unveiled another masterpiece of practical physics, the art of sawing with abrasives. Their saw was nothing like a modern metal blade. Instead, it was often a simple, flat slab of sandstone, a rock softer than the granite it was meant to cut. This seems to defy all logic, yet it was brilliantly effective. The secret was not in the saw itself, but in what it carried. A craftsman would pour a wet, gritty slurry of water and sand onto the cutting line. This slurry was loaded with quartz crystals, a mineral far harder than granite. As the sandstone slab was dragged back and forth, it pressed these microscopic, jagged quartz particles into the granite surface. The soft sandstone saw was not the cutter. It was merely a delivery system, a handle for millions of invisible, diamond-hard teeth. Each pull and push ground away an infinitesimal amount of stone, a process of relentless, incremental subtraction. Think of it as the world's slowest, most patient sheet of sandpaper, one that could eventually slice through a mountain. This is precisely how the colossal limestone blocks for the Great Pyramids were quarried. Workers would cut deep grooves using these abrasive saws, sometimes with teams of people pulling on ropes to move the blade back and forth for days or even weeks on a single cut. The same principle was used with a simple copper wire or a strip of rawhide, as long as it could carry the all-important abrasive slurry. This reveals a cognitive leap, a shift from using a single material as a tool to creating a composite system. The tool and the abrasive worked together as a single unit, a technology where the intelligence was in the application of physics, not just in the object being held. It proves that the cutting tool does not need to be harder than the material it works. It just needs to be smarter, and that intelligence came from understanding how to harness the hidden hardness all around them, locked within common sand. With this method, they could slice stone with control and precision, but another challenge remained, one that required drilling into the stone's very heart. The most delicate challenge of all was not cutting a line, but creating a perfect hole. To hollow out a space within solid rock required a different kind of genius, one that transformed a simple, fragile reed into a precision drill. Artisans would take a hollow tube, perhaps made from reed or bone, and load its open end with a gritty paste of wet sand. They would then set this tube vertically onto the stone and begin to spin it, either by rolling it rapidly between their palms or by using a simple bow to rotate it back and forth with steady rhythm. The tube itself was soft and would wear away quickly, but that was part of the design. As it spun, the abrasive quartz sand trapped at the tip did all the real work, grinding a narrow, circular groove deep into the stone. With patient, persistent rotation, this groove would eventually wear completely through the material, leaving behind a perfectly cylindrical core of stone inside the hollow tube and a clean, round hole in the workpiece. This was an early form of core drilling, a technology that feels remarkably modern in its logic. They were not drilling out the entire volume of the hole, only a thin, circular curve to liberate a solid plug. This efficient method was used to create everything from small decorative beads to the magnificent stone vessels found in pre-dynastic Egypt, objects with such thin, uniform walls that their creation seems to defy the tools of the era. Here, the principle of the soft tool guiding the hard abrasive reaches its most elegant form. The reed was disposable, a mere sacrificial guide for the relentless, microscopic cutting of the sand. The true tool was not an object at all, but a system of motion and material, a perfect marriage of simple physics and profound patience. This understanding of rotational abrasion unlocked a new dimension of precision, allowing for work that was not just shaped on the surface, but sculpted from within. And it was this same core concept that would eventually be scaled up to tackle the most awe-inspiring stonework of the ancient world. That fragile reed drill and the abrasive saw both relied on a hidden partner, a material chosen not for its strength, but for its willingness to break in just the right way. For the foundational act of creating the tools themselves, ancient artisans were not just picking up any rock. They were early masters of material science, seeking out specific stones with almost magical properties. Flint, chert, and the volcanic glass known as obsidian were the prized materials of the age. What made them so special was their internal architecture, a cryptocrystalline structure. This means their crystals are so incredibly small and tightly interlocked that to the naked eye, the stone appears smooth and uniform. This unique structure is the key to conchoidal fracture. When struck with a precise blow from a softer stone, like an antler or a piece of wood, these materials do not crumble. Instead, they fracture like thick glass, peeling away in sharp, predictable flakes that leave behind a scalloped, shell-like pattern on the core. This process, called knapping, was a form of sculpting through controlled breakage. A skilled craftsperson could use direct percussion, striking the core to remove large flakes, or pressure flaking, pressing against the edge with a pointed tool to detach smaller, finer slivers. Through this, they could shape a lump of flint into a specialized toolkit. They created barrens with strong, chisel-like points for scoring deep lines into granite. They made scrapers with a robust, curved edge for smoothing rough surfaces. They fashioned delicate gravers for incising fine details. The resulting edges could be atomically thin, far sharper than any modern surgical steel scalpel. This was not a matter of chance. The consistent selection of these specific materials across continents and millennia reveals a profound, empirical understanding of geology. These artisans knew that the stone itself was not just a passive object, it was an active participant in the work. Its inherent fracture properties dictated what it could become. The tool was born from a deep, hands-on knowledge of the land, a collaboration between human intention and the hidden potential within the earth. With these perfectly fashioned tools in hand, they were ready to perform their most precise work, a process that transformed simple markings into permanent, profound art. While the hard stone and sharp sand did the cutting, it was water that truly orchestrated the entire process. This humble liquid was the unsung hero of ancient engineering, a multi-purpose medium that transformed simple abrasion into a precise and manageable science. Its first role was as a coolant. The relentless grinding of stone on stone generates intense friction heat, enough to damage the crystalline structure of the workpiece or even shatter a delicate tool. Water absorbed this heat, keeping the entire system stable and protecting the integrity of the material being shaped. At the same time, water acted as a cleaning agent, continuously flushing away the fine, powdered stone debris known as swarf. This constant washing was crucial because if these waste particles were allowed to build up, they would cushion the cutting action, creating a muddy paste that slowed progress to a crawl. By carrying the swarf away, water ensured that fresh, sharp, abrasive grains were always in contact with a clean stone surface, maintaining maximum cutting efficiency. But water's most ingenious function was in modifying the behavior of the abrasive itself. A dry sand slurry would create a cloud of dangerous, lung-clogging dust and would tend to slide uselessly across the stone. Adding water transformed the physics. It made the sand particles slightly more cohesive, allowing them to roll and skid between the tool and the workpiece. This rolling action meant that each sharp quartz crystal could present a new, sharp edge to the stone, grinding it down far more effectively than if the particles were simply embedded and dragged. In some traditions, knowledge became so refined that specific springs or sources of water were preferred, with artisans believing that certain mineral contents enhanced the cutting speed or final polish. This highlights a profound understanding that went beyond simple lubrication. Water was not just a helper, it was an active, essential component of the abrasive system, a process-enhancing medium that elevated a brute force technique into a controlled, repeatable technology. It was the quiet, flowing intelligence that made the impossible patience of stoneworking not just possible, but perfect. This final stage of creation required a touch as delicate as it was deliberate. For the most intricate work, where a single misplaced blow could shatter weeks of effort, artisans turned from percussion to pure pressure. They would take a nearly finished tool, perhaps a spear point or a carving blank, and brace it firmly. In their other hand, they held a pointed implement, often the sturdy tip of an antler or a sharpened piece of dense wood. This was not a hammer, it was a precision instrument of force. With focused control, they would press this tip against the very edge of the stone tool, applying steady, inward pressure. The goal was not a violent impact, but a controlled release. Under this exact force, the stone's crystalline structure would yield, popping off a small, thin flake in a predictable arc. This was the art of pressure flaking, the pinnacle of hands-on lithic engineering. Each precise press refined the tool's silhouette, transforming a rough outline into a symmetrical, barbed arrowhead designed to remain in its target. It could carve the subtle curves of a small animal figurine from soft stone like steatite, or inscribe fine, flowing lines onto a slate plaque, turning a functional object into a piece of lasting art. This method provided a level of control that striking never could, allowing for last-minute adjustments and corrections that saved pieces from being ruined. The sound was not a loud crack, but a series of quiet clicks, the sound of perfection being achieved one microscopic failure at a time. It was a process that demanded not just skill, but a deep, intuitive feel for the material, a conversation between the artisan's intent and the stone's hidden grain. This intimate knowledge of how to coax a desired form from reluctant stone represents one of humanity's earliest dialogues with the physical world, a dialogue that would eventually lead to the shaping of civilizations themselves. Yet the relentless quest for perfection did not end with sand. As artisans mastered the use of common quartz, they began to listen more closely to the earth itself, discovering that some stones held an even greater hidden strength. Advanced cultures learned to seek out and employ specialized abrasives, materials that could elevate a smooth surface into a true, reflective mirror. The ancient Egyptians, for example, used a naturally occurring rock called Emery. This was no ordinary sand, it was a dense, dark mixture of corundum and magnetite. Corundum is one of the hardest minerals found in nature, surpassed only by diamond. When crushed into a fine powder and mixed with water or oil, this emery paste became an incredibly potent polishing agent. Rubbed patiently onto a granite surface with a leather pad or a smooth stone, it could systematically grind down the microscopic peaks and valleys left by coarser sands, eventually achieving that legendary, glassy finish we still marvel at on ancient statues and sarcophagi. The very act of procuring these specialized materials signaled a profound shift in technological thinking. It was a move away from simply using what was readily available underfoot, toward a deliberate search for superior, high-performance substances. This was not just an improvement, it was an optimization. Certain projects demanded the ultimate finish, and for those, only the hardest abrasives would suffice. This evolution marks a critical step in the history of innovation. It shows a culture moving from general-purpose methods to material-specific processes, from effective work to exceptional artistry. The choice of abrasive was no longer a matter of convenience. It was a deliberate decision based on the desired outcome, a clear line drawn between what was functional and what was flawless. But for the truly monumental task of liberating a massive block from the living bedrock, even the abrasive saw had its limits. A different kind of intelligence was required, one that could harness nature's own quiet power to do the heavy lifting. Ancient engineers solved this with a brilliant application of one of humanity's simplest machines, the wedge. Their method was a masterpiece of foresight and physics. First, teams would use stone drills to create a line of carefully spaced holes along the desired fracture line on a granite surface. Then, they would insert dry, hardwood wedges into each of these sockets. The final act was not one of force but of patience. They poured water over the wood, soaking it thoroughly. As the wood absorbed the water, it began to swell, and within the confined space of the drilled hole, this swelling generated an immense, relentless pressure. This hydraulic force, distributed evenly along the perforated line, would build steadily until, with a sharp crack, the granite yielded, splitting cleanly along the predetermined path. This was not a violent explosion, but a controlled release of stored energy. It allowed for the extraction of perfectly shaped, multi-ton blocks with an efficiency that pure manpower could never achieve. From the quarries that supplied stone for the Great Pyramids to the sources of marble for classical temples, this technique transformed raw cliffs into manageable building units. It represents a cognitive leap from working against a material to working with its inherent properties, a brilliant fusion of simple machine principles and a deep understanding of natural physics. The wedge did not cut the stone, it simply guided the stone to cut itself. The granite sarcophagi sealed within the Great Pyramid present a silent, stunning contradiction. These massive stone containers, designed to last for eternity, exhibit a level of precision that seems to belong to a different age entirely. Their vast surfaces are not merely flat, they are true to within a few hundredths of an inch over many feet, with corners cut to a perfect 90 degrees. This is not the work of crude force, but of a deeply refined, systematic methodology that elevated simple materials into instruments of perfection. The journey to this flawless finish began with the raw block. To achieve such planar surfaces, artisans likely employed a technique of comparative referencing. They may have used 3 granite slabs of known flatness, rubbing them against each other in pairs with an abrasive slurry. Any high spots on one slab would be worn down by the others, a self-correcting process that eventually resulted in 3 reference surfaces of near-perfect flatness. These master slabs could then be used to check and guide the shaping of the sarcophagus itself, a brilliant example of creating precision from simplicity. For the initial shaping and the deep, straight cuts, they turned to their most trusted composite tool, the abrasive saw. But here they enhanced it. Instead of a soft sandstone blade, they used long, flat copper blades. Copper is too soft to scratch granite, but it is the perfect carrier for a wet sand abrasive. Teams of workers would pull these blades back and forth, constantly replenishing the quartz-rich slurry. The copper itself would wear away, continually exposing fresh, sharp sand particles to do the cutting. This created the incredibly straight seams and flat planes we still observe. The real challenge, however, lay in the interior. Hollowing out the inside of a solid granite block to create a perfect box required a different approach for the corners. The long, straight copper saws could not navigate a 90-degree turn. For the internal corners, craftsmen used a combination of techniques. They likely drilled a series of overlapping holes along the inner line using tubular drills, then used stone picks to carefully break away the remaining webs of stone before finishing the surfaces with abrasives. Every step was a careful progression from coarse to fine, from shaping to perfecting. The final polish was achieved with increasingly fine abrasive pastes, culminating in powders like crushed emery, rubbed patiently with leather or smooth stones until the granite gleamed like dark water. This was not a single act of genius, but a cumulative process, a cascade of patient, logical steps. The sarcophagus is not just an object, it is a frozen moment in a long, deliberate dance between human intention and the nature of stone itself. The same quiet patience that shaped the pyramids was echoing across the world. From the dense rainforests of the Americas to the river valleys of India, ancient cultures, separated by vast oceans, were arriving at the same brilliant conclusions, weaving a global tapestry of innovation. The universal challenge of hard stone was met with a universal truth that true power lies not in the hardness of the tool, but in the intelligence of its application. Yet within this shared understanding, local ingenuity blossomed into stunning diversity. In Mesoamerica, the Olmec and Maya civilizations prized jadate, a stone tougher than steel. To carve it into their intricate celts and ornate regalia, they employed a deceptively simple tool, the string saw. A sturdy cord, made from plant fiber or rawhide, was pulled back and forth across a jadate block, its path constantly fed with a slurry of water and abrasive quartz sand. The flexible cord allowed for remarkable control, able to follow complex curves and hollow out deep spaces that a rigid tool could never manage. Each pull of the string dragged countless microscopic quartz teeth across the jade surface, slowly, inexorably, persuading the stone to yield its hidden forms. This was a different kind of conversation with the material, one of persistent friction rather than percussive force. Across the Atlantic, in Neolithic Europe, communities were undertaking projects of a different scale but equal dedication. They sought out rare, tough stones like jadeite from the Alps, transforming them into gleaming, polished axe heads that were both functional tools and powerful social symbols. The process was a monumental investment of time, beginning with days of pecking the rough shape with a harder hammerstone. This was followed by hundreds of hours of grinding and polishing with sand and water on slabs of sandstone, a labor of love that could span an entire season. The resulting object was not merely a cutter of wood, but a vessel of status and spiritual meaning, its flawless surface a testament to the artisan's skill and the community's values. Meanwhile, in ancient India, the ambition was architectural and imperial. The creation of the famous polished stone pillars for Emperor Ashoka's edicts required a mastery of large-scale grinding. Craftsmen would have shaped these colossal sandstone monoliths using abrasives on a grand scale, likely employing teams to pull large grinding stones back and forth, their rhythmic work gradually achieving that legendary, mirror-like sheen that has endured for over 2 millennia. The pillar's surface was not just for beauty, it was a statement of power and permanence, a flawless canvas for moral proclamations meant to last for ages. This global mosaic reveals a profound pattern. The core physics of abrasion and percussion were a universal discovery, a fundamental chapter in the human story of problem solving. Yet the specific characters in each chapter were uniquely local: the resilient bamboo, the malleable copper, the strong rawhide cord. The choice of material was shaped by the environment, but the final object was shaped by culture, a perfect fusion of universal physics and unique human expression. This collective knowledge, built stone by patient stone, laid a foundation so strong it would eventually support the weight of metal itself. But how can we be sure these methods truly worked without a time machine? The proof comes not from ancient texts but from modern hands in the growing field of experimental archaeology. Here, dedicated researchers become detectives and artisans, testing historical theories by physically reconstructing the past. One such figure, the master flint knapper John Lord, spent countless hours in his workshop, his hands gripping dolerite hammerstones to peck and grind blocks of Welsh bluestone, the same material used at Stonehenge. His work was slow, methodical, and revealing. He demonstrated that through persistent pecking alone, one could shape this incredibly hard rock, recording the immense time and physical toll such work demanded. Across the world, another pioneer, archaeologist Denys Stocks, took the experiments further. He recreated the copper saws and drills of ancient Egypt, using simple copper sheets and tubes with a slurry of sand and water as his only cutting agents. His results were astonishing. With teams of volunteers pulling the saws, he successfully cut deep grooves into granite and drilled holes using a bow-driven reed drill, precisely replicating the tool marks found on authentic artifacts. These were not just demonstrations, they were data collection missions. By rigorously timing each process, they provided the first concrete estimates for how long it would take to quarry a single pyramid block or hollow out a granite vessel. This transforms our understanding from a vague notion of hard work into a tangible appreciation of the immense human effort involved. It reveals that the true challenge was not a lack of technology, but a profound investment of time and coordinated labor, turning theoretical speculation into a physical, undeniable truth that you can see and touch. The true masterpiece was not the stone tool itself, but the mind of its maker. To look at a raw, unshaped lump of flint or a rough granite boulder and see a polished axe or a perfect vessel locked within requires a kind of mental time travel. The artisan had to hold a finished image in their mind, an abstract goal that did not yet exist in the physical world. This was not a momentary impulse, but a sustained act of imagination, a blueprint drawn in thought long before any stone was struck. The entire process, from selecting the right material to the final polish, was a carefully choreographed sequence. A single misstep, one poorly angled blow, could shatter weeks of progress, rendering the entire investment of effort useless. This demanded more than skill. It demanded a profound discipline of the mind, the ability to plan multiple steps ahead and adhere to that plan with unwavering focus. Perhaps the most radical requirement was patience, a commodity measured not in minutes but in seasons. A single jadate pendant could demand 100 hours of work, a granite bowl far more. This was a deferred gratification on a scale we can scarcely comprehend today, a willingness to invest immense labor into a single object with no immediate reward. This cognitive shift from reactive survival to long-term project management was a quiet revolution in human consciousness. The mental muscles strengthened by shaping stone, the capacity for abstract planning and delayed satisfaction, became the very same foundations upon which humanity built its future. The patience to nurture a seed into a crop, the foresight to assemble stones into a temple, these monumental leaps in civilization were first practiced in the humble, repetitive motion of hands against stone. The stone itself spoke, and the artisan understood its language. Every strike, every grinding pass, produced a distinct sound that told a story about the material's hidden integrity. A skilled craftsperson, their ears attuned through years of experience, could diagnose the health of the stone from its acoustic signature. The resonant, clear ping of a well-placed hammer blow signaled solid, flawless crystalline structure, a promise of a clean fracture. A dull, hollow clunk, however, was a warning, the sound of an internal flaw or a hidden crack that could spiderweb through the entire piece with the next impact. This was real-time, non-destructive testing long before the concept had a name. When drilling into a vessel, the subtle shift in the sound of the spinning tube, from a steady grinding hum to a higher-pitched, almost watery whisper, was the unmistakable signal that the drill was about to break through the other side. This auditory cue allowed for immediate adjustment, a gentle easing of pressure to prevent a blowout that could ruin the delicate inner wall. This acute listening was not a separate skill. It was woven into the very fabric of the craft, a vital thread in the sensory tapestry of creation. The hands felt the vibration, the eyes saw the powder, but the ears heard the truth within the stone. This deep, embodied knowledge transformed the artisan from someone who merely worked on the stone to someone who worked with it, a true partner in the delicate dance of revealing form from formlessness. It was a conversation, and the stone was always talking. That lingering question of impossibility often leads us down a path of speculation toward lost civilizations or otherworldly visitors. It is a compelling story, one that captures the imagination, suggesting our ancestors could not possibly have done this on their own. Yet, this narrative of lost supertechnology does a profound disservice to the very real, very human minds that achieved these wonders. The evidence, when examined without the filter of mystique, points not to magic but to a deeper, more inspiring truth. The incredible precision we see was not a gift from elsewhere. It was earned through a profound partnership with the natural world, built on thousands of years of accumulated observation and refined skill. To suggest it was impossible with the tools we know they had is to ignore the mountains of archaeological proof and the successful work of modern experimenters who have replicated these results using nothing but period-appropriate techniques. It dismisses the power of patience, a resource far more potent than any fictional laser. The real mystery is not how they did it with alien help, but how they achieved such perfection with such simple means. This is the true awe, the genuine marvel. When we strip away the myths of ancient astronauts and lost high-tech devices, what remains is far more magnificent, the undeniable proof of human ingenuity operating at its highest level. It is a story of intellect triumphing over limitation, of cultures investing generations in a single project, their legacy carved not in mystery but in solid, tangible stone. This is a legacy that belongs entirely to humanity, a testament to what we can accomplish when we truly listen to the world around us and apply our minds with unwavering focus. The clang of the first copper tools did not signal the end of the Stone Age, far from it. For the artisans tasked with carving granite, the new metal was a disappointment in its pure form. Soft copper simply could not hold an edge against such a hard stone. In many cases, a well-made flint scraper or a simple slab of sandstone used with abrasive sand remained the superior, more efficient choice for shaping and smoothing. The true value of these early metal saws was not in their cutting teeth, but in their ability to act as a better host for the real cutting agent. A copper blade was more durable and consistent than a sandstone slab, able to hold and transport the life-giving abrasive slurry more efficiently over long, straight cuts. The innovation was not a new way to cut, but a better way to deliver the same ancient, microscopic teeth of quartz. This was not a replacement, it was an upgrade to a system that already worked brilliantly. The genuine revolution had to wait for the arrival of iron, a metal that could be made significantly harder than copper. Through a process of carburization, where iron was heated in a carbon-rich environment, the first primitive steel was born, creating a material that could finally hold a sharp edge against hard stone. Yet, when this new, harder metal was forged into chisels and saws, the techniques used to wield them were not invented from scratch. They were borrowed directly from the deep past. The same patient, grinding motion, the same understanding of using an abrasive medium, the same knowledge of how to work with a material's grain. All these principles were seamlessly transferred from stone tools to iron ones. The age of stone did not have a dramatic finale. It faded slowly, its wisdom absorbed into the clang of the smithy's hammer. The legacy of those first artisans is not just in the monuments they left behind, but in the very DNA of modern manufacturing, where the fundamental idea of guiding a hard abrasive to shape a harder workpiece remains absolutely central. That flawless granite sarcophagus was never the work of a single pair of hands. It was the creation of an entire society, a living machine of coordinated effort. To transform a mountain into a monument required a breathtaking level of social organization, a silent symphony of labor where every individual played a specific, indispensable part. This was not a chaotic mob of workers, but a highly structured workforce with specialized roles that would feel familiar in any modern enterprise. There were the quarrymen, the masters of extraction who understood the hidden fracture lines in the bedrock. There were the toolmakers, constantly producing and sharpening the dolerite hammers and church chisels that were consumed by the ton. Others were dedicated to procuring and preparing the lifeblood of the operation, the abrasives, gathering and crushing quartz sand into the perfect consistency for sawing and polishing. Then came the carvers, the artists who translated architectural plans into stone, and finally the polishers whose patient, repetitive motions gave the stone its eternal shine. This intricate division of labor reveals a profound truth. The project's scale was only possible because no single person had to know or do everything. Each specialist honed one skill to perfection, creating a collective expertise far greater than the sum of its parts. But this human machine needed fuel and shelter. The true scale of the endeavor becomes clear when you consider the vast support system required just to sustain the workforce itself. Bakers, brewers, fishermen, and butchers worked to feed thousands. Builders erected temporary barracks and administrators managed the distribution of food, tools, and raw materials. This entire ecosystem, from the quarry face to the daily bread ration, was a monumental feat of logistics. It stands as undeniable, indirect evidence of a complex society, one with a clear social hierarchy capable of coordinating labor on an immense scale and managing a surplus of resources. The grain to feed a non-farming workforce, the cloth for their clothing, the organization of their shifts, all of this had to be planned and executed for years, even decades. The stone they shaped so patiently was more than a building material. It was the canvas upon which the very structure of their civilization was built, both literally in the rising monument and figuratively in the sophisticated social engine that made it possible. The stone was never just a material waiting to be shaped. In the hands of these ancient artisans, a rough block of granite or a piece of jade was something far more profound, a sleeping spirit waiting to be awakened. The long, patient work of carving was not merely a technical process, it was a sacred act of revelation. The craftsperson saw their role not as a creator imposing a form, but as a midwife, carefully removing everything that was not the sacred object hidden within. Every flake that fell away was a step closer to the true essence of the stone, a spiritual form made physical through disciplined labor. This deep, respectful relationship transformed the workshop into a kind of sanctuary. The craftsperson knew the character of their material, its hidden faults and its stubborn grain, treating it not as an adversary to be conquered, but as a partner in a shared journey. The immense time required, those hundreds of hours spent grinding and polishing, was not seen as a cost, but as an essential ingredient. That invested effort imbued the finished object with a power and value that went far beyond its function. A simple jade axe became a symbol of authority. its flawless surface a testament to the community's values and the artisan's connection to the earth. A granite vessel intended for ceremonial use carried within it the memory of every strike, every hour of focused intention. This spiritual dimension provided the fuel for the incredible patience we see etched into these artifacts. It answers a modern question of why anyone would spend a lifetime on such a demanding task. The answer lies in a worldview where the material and the spiritual were inseparable, where the act of making was itself a form of reverence, a conversation with the very substance of the world. Every artifact holds a frozen whisper of the hands that made it. To understand how these ancient objects were created, archaeologists become detectives, examining the microscopic evidence left behind on stone surfaces. This is a form of forensic science where every scratch and groove tells a specific part of the story. The marks left by an abrasive saw are not random. They appear as a series of incredibly fine, parallel striations, like the grain on a very fine piece of wood. These lines are the direct record of each pass, the path carved by millions of quartz particles dragged back and forth by the saw's steady rhythm. When you look at a drilled hole, the evidence is just as clear. The interior wall of a hole made by a tubular drill is not smooth. It retains a set of concentric, circular grooves, the permanent signature of the rotating tube and its trapped abrasive slurry. These spiral lines are the ghost of the drill's motion, a perfect imprint of its spinning path through the stone. The distinctive texture of the pecking method is entirely different. It leaves behind a surface that looks like a miniature moonscape, a field of tiny, overlapping craters and pits. This is the cumulative fingerprint of thousands of precise hammerstone impacts, a texture that cannot be created by any other process. And then there is the final act of polishing, which methodically erases all these previous marks. The abrasive paste, with its increasingly fine particles, systematically grinds down the peaks and valleys, eventually leaving a surface that is so smooth it can reflect light, a blank slate that signals the work's completion. But how can we be certain which tool made which mark? The final piece of this detective work comes from direct comparison. Experimental archaeologists like Denise Stocks have painstakingly recreated ancient tools and techniques, using copper saws with sand and bow-driven drills on fresh stone. They then place the modern tool marks they create side by side with the ancient ones found on artifacts. When the microscopic signatures match, the method is confirmed. This allows researchers to not only identify the specific tools used thousands of years ago, but also to decipher the exact sequence of operations. They can read the story of an object's creation, from the first rough peck of a hammerstone to the final sweep of a polishing cloth, all told by the stone itself. A stone tool's true potential was only unlocked when it left the hand. The revolutionary act of hafting, of binding a sharp stone blade to a handle of wood, bone, or antler, transformed a simple cutting edge into an extension of the human arm. This was the birth of the composite tool, a system where the whole was undeniably greater than the sum of its parts. Think of the difference between pushing down on a knife with your palm versus gripping its handle. The handle gives you leverage, control, and power. A handheld scraper could smooth a wood surface, but that same scraper firmly lashed to a curved antler tine allowed the user to pull with their entire shoulder, applying a steady, even pressure that produced a far finer finish with less fatigue. This mechanical advantage was a quantum leap in efficiency, but the most transformative example was the hafted axe, a stone axe head, bound with sinew or plant fiber to a stout wooden handle, became a woodworking tool that could literally shape civilizations. It could fell trees for timber, split planks for shelter, and carve dugout canoes that opened up rivers and coastlines for travel and trade. With a reliable hafted axe, communities could shape wood on a grand scale, and that wood, in turn, became the handle for the next tool, creating a cascade of innovation. This was not just an improvement, it was a fundamental shift in thinking. It demonstrated a deep understanding of physics, of how to amplify human force through leverage. More profoundly, it showed an ability to see the potential in a combination of disparate elements, to envision a stone, a piece of wood, and a length of cord not as separate objects, but as the components of a single, more powerful idea. The intelligence had moved from being locked within a single piece of stone to residing in the system that held it all together. That intimate conversation with local stone defined entire technological identities. A society's entire approach to shaping the world was not a matter of free choice, but a brilliant response to the geological hand they were dealt. In regions blessed with vast deposits of high-quality flint or obsidian, communities evolved into master knappers. Their world was one of precise percussion and controlled fracture, their toolkits filled with razor-sharp blades and projectile points born from the predictable physics of conchoidal breakage. This was a technology of the instant where a single, well-placed blow could liberate a perfect cutting edge. Yet just over the horizon, a different reality prevailed. A culture situated near immense granite quarries, but with only limited access to fine-grained chert, faced a completely different set of constraints. For them, knapping was not a viable primary strategy. Instead, they perfected the slow, rhythmic arts of pecking and grinding. Their innovation was not in the speed of creation, but in the relentless, incremental subtraction of material, a testament to a different kind of genius born from necessity. This principle of constraint-driven creativity is one of the most powerful engines in human history. Scarcity does not always stifle innovation, it often focuses it with incredible intensity. When you cannot import the perfect material, you are forced to achieve a deep, intimate understanding of the one you have. You learn its hidden strengths, its subtle weaknesses, and how to coax it into the forms you need. This is how the ancient Egyptians, working with the relentless hardness of granite, became unparalleled masters of abrasive technology. It is how the peoples of the British Isles, with their tough, intractable bluestone, developed sophisticated methods of shaping through persistent pecking. They did not see their local stone as a poor substitute for flint. They saw it as a challenge to be met with profound patience and ingenuity. This localized problem-solving led to a stunning global diversity of solutions. The same fundamental challenge, how to shape hard stone, was answered in dozens of different ways, each a unique reflection of a people and their place. The story of early technology is not one of a single, linear path, but a branching tree of innovation, its roots sunk deep into the specific soils of local necessity. The same physical principles that shaped granite obelisks are now etching the silicon chips that power our world. That ancient concept of using a soft tool to guide a hard abrasive has evolved into one of the most precise processes known to modern engineering: chemical-mechanical polishing. In the creation of a computer processor, a soft, porous pad presses against the silicon wafer. A sophisticated slurry, a direct descendant of the wet sand used millennia ago, flows between them. This slurry contains abrasive nanoparticles and delicate chemical agents that work in concert to polish the wafer's surface to an atomic level of smoothness. Any microscopic imperfection would ruin the intricate circuits printed upon it. This is the ultimate refinement of the old idea, where the tool does not cut but guides a chemical and mechanical dance to achieve perfection. Look at a common piece of sandpaper and you see the direct lineage. The grit embedded on its surface is the modern, standardized equivalent of the quartz sand an artisan once gathered from a riverbed. The backing is merely a more durable and consistent handle, A modern angle grinder with its spinning disc of composite abrasive operates on the exact same principle as the bow-driven drill, just amplified by electric motors. The relentless friction-generated heat that threatened ancient work is still a challenge today, solved by the same essential partner, water, now delivered as a high-pressure coolant in industrial saws and grinders. Even the monumental task of core drilling, which once liberated a cylinder of stone using a hollow reed, now uses diamond-encrusted bits to sample the deep earth or create precise openings in concrete. The diamonds are simply the ultimate abrasive, the logical end point in the quest for the hardest possible particle. This enduring legacy reveals a profound truth about technological progress. Our most advanced manufacturing does not stand apart from the past, it is built directly upon it. The foundational intelligence, the understanding of how to harness microscopic hardness to shape a resistant world, was discovered and perfected by those first artisans. They established the core physics that we have merely scaled and accelerated. The journey from a stone bead drilled with a reed to a silicon chip polished by a robot is not a story of replacement, but of continuous evolution. The ancient world provided the blueprint, written not on papyrus, but in the very way we choose to interact with the material universe. These subtle undulations and faint striations are a quiet language of authenticity. In our modern world, we are surrounded by objects of flawless, machined perfection, where every surface is identical and every angle is a precise 90 degrees. This sterile uniformity tells us a story of industrial efficiency, but it speaks of no human hand. The ancient hand-worked stone tells a different story entirely. A slight asymmetry in a granite bowl, a gentle curve in a polished axe head that deviates from the mathematical ideal, these are not mistakes. They are the direct physical signature of the artisan, a unique mark left by the rhythm of their breath and the pressure of their grip. That faint, almost invisible scratch from a final polishing pass is not a flaw to be hidden, but a whisper of the very moment of creation, a permanent record of a single, focused intention from thousands of years ago. This connection is profoundly personal. When you see the tool marks on a stone vessel, you are not just looking at an object, you are witnessing the ghost of a process, the lingering evidence of another person's effort and skill. It bridges the vast expanse of time, making the ancient craftsperson feel startlingly present. This aesthetic values the journey as much as the destination. The object is not merely a finished product, it is a map of its own making, inviting us to trace the path of the hands that shaped it. This stands in stark contrast to the disposable nature of mass production, reminding us that true beauty often resides not in cold perfection, but in the warm, unmistakable evidence of human touch. The story of stone and sand is ultimately a story about us. It reveals a fundamental truth of human progress, not as a sudden explosion of invention, but as a quiet, persistent accumulation of knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Every perfectly struck flake, every groove carved by a copper saw, was a lesson learned and then improved upon over countless lifetimes. This was a grand, collaborative experiment spanning millennia, where each artisan stood on the shoulders of those who came before, adding their own small discovery to a growing body of wisdom. The precision we marvel at was not a magical gift, it was earned. It was the product of profound observation, of watching how stone breaks under different angles of force, of noticing how water changes the behavior of sand, of learning to listen to the subtle sounds of a successful cut. These ancient masters were the premier engineers of their age, their minds as sharp as the obsidian blades they fashioned. They solved problems of physics and material science with nothing but intuition, patience, and an intimate connection to their world. Their legacy is not confined to museums or archaeological sites. It lives on in the very principles that guide our modern technology, in the relentless human drive to understand the rules of the physical world and then use them to shape our future. Their achievements stand as a permanent challenge to our own times, a reminder that the most powerful tool we possess is not made of metal or silicon, but is the limitless potential of the human mind when it is focused with clear intent and unwavering patience. The legacy of these patient artisans is a story that continues to be written with every new discovery. If this journey into the depths of ancient innovation has sparked your curiosity, you can continue exploring with us right here. Subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so our next investigation into history's greatest mysteries finds its way to you. We want to know what piece of ancient technology fascinates you the most. Is it the towering megaliths, the intricate metalwork, or perhaps a different mystery entirely? Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. We love hearing from you and often base future content on your suggestions. Let's keep this conversation about our incredible past going together.